With Matt Reeves giving Rob Pattinson's Batman a grounding in the real world, this is the least like a superhero we've ever seen Batman. That verisimilitude makes Batman a far more urban vigilante and enables a more in-depth study than ever before of the Batman and what makes him tick. Hi all, my name is Ryan and welcome to my channel What the Pop, where we discuss pop culture in general and Buffy a lot. Today we are looking at the themes and character development with Matt Reeves' The Batman. This will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, you have been warned. Batman has, to a large extent, always been overshadowed by his rogues gallery. Michael Keaton, who played Batman in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman and its sequel Batman Returns, actually commented as much when playing against Jack Nicholson's Joker, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, and Danny DeVito's Penguin, all characters much larger than Keaton's Batman. I think in my review of The Long Halloween Parts 1 and 2, I mentioned that I actually find Batman to be the least interesting part of the Bat universe. His rogues gallery and sidekicks and colleagues are more interesting than Batman himself. And I think part of that is because we've seen Batman's origin story so many times, it's no longer particularly interesting. And Batman as this broody Dark Knight is a single note that kind of gets tiresome the more it gets played. So with a character whose rogues gallery consists of an insane clown, a guy who can't die, a man who's part reptile, a woman who controls plants, a few crazy psychologists, and various other people both superpowered and not, how do you go about making Batman more interesting? How do you make him as compelling as the people he is fighting or the people he is fighting alongside? Given that you can't change his origin story, let's face it, apart from Superman crashing to Earth and being taken in by the Kents, or Peter Parker being bitten by a radioactive spider, Bruce Wayne's parents being killed in front of him, leading him to become Batman, is probably the most well-known origin story in all of comicdom. But what you can change is the person he becomes as a result of that origin story. When Tim Burton directed Batman in 1989, he made it a dark film, a far cry from the most well-known depiction at the time, Adam West's camp and colourful turn in the TV show from the 60s. The comics had long ago abandoned the camp for the dark, particularly when Frank Miller came along. When Joel Schumacher took over for Batman Forever, the third movie, it returned somewhat to its camp TV origins, being far more colourful, less dark visually and thematically, and complete with nipples on the Batsuit. This resulted in the very camp follow-up Batman and Robin. And once again in both those movies, Batman was overshadowed by everyone around him, being the least interesting character on the screen. In Chris Nolan's Batman trilogy, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, Nolan took a far more realistic approach to Batman and his villains than had previously been depicted, trying to ground it in reality rather than superhero fantasy. And while some people will claim that Christian Bale is the best Batman so far, something I disagree with, his Batman was again overshadowed by more interesting villains, particularly Tom Hardy's Bane, and of course Heath Ledger's brilliant performance as the Joker. Ben Affleck's Batman was again a darker take on the character, matched with Henry Cavill's Superman, the darkest version of that character depicted so far. But Batfleck never received his own movie that allowed for any real character focus and development. Matt Reeves continues with embracing the darkness in The Batman and grounding the character in reality. Even more so than Nolan's trilogy, Reeves' Batman is as real as a Batman story could get. His character is not the unbeatable badass that he's often depicted as. He's very much human and a man in a suit. And we see in this movie multiple times when Batman is fallible. He gets hit, he gets shot, but the armour of the Batsuit protects him. He gets knocked unconscious, he has to be saved and helped by other characters. He makes mistakes in his investigation. While he's still Batman, he's still the intelligent detective trying to figure out who the Riddler is and how to stop him. And he's still a fighter, taking out multiple thugs, and he's still a skilled stunt driver. In this movie, he is just a man, and that makes him the most relatable Batman to date. The dark tone of this Batman extends to Gotham itself. Most of this movie is filmed in the dark, adding to the oppressive feel of this city. On top of that, it rains a lot. The sun is never shining here. It creates a feeling of hopelessness. There is literally no light at the end of the tunnel. Even when scenes are filmed during the day, such as the funeral scene for the mayor, it is overcast and dark with the constant threat of rain. And it is shot with stunning visuals by cinematographer Reeve, an Australian cinematographer who most recently has been nominated for an Academy Award for his work on Dune. It brings a weight to Gotham itself. Andy Serkis, who plays Alfred, said, "I've never seen Gotham look so complete and sort of its own thing and a character." The dark and foreboding city has been a constant in the Batman movies, but this is the first time that the city looks real. In Tim Burton's movie, he created a gothic nightmare. Production designer Anton Furst described the team's desire to make Gotham City the ugliest and bleakest metropolis imaginable. We imagined what New York City might have become without a planning commission, a city run by crime with a riot of architectural styles, an essay in ugliness, as if hell erupted through the pavement and kept on going. This gothic hell on earth was turned into a garish impossibility in the Joel Schumacher films, very much a cartoonish vision of Gotham. Nolan was the first to anchor his city in reality, a real city where a vigilante crime fighter could conceivably exist, but even his Gotham had elements of the unreal about it. Reeves takes that realism even further. There is nothing, no location in this version of Gotham that couldn't exist in a real city somewhere. Now the darkness here is representative of the heart of Gotham, the seedy underbelly of crime and corruption that created an environment where the Wayne's death wasn't anything particularly unusual and ultimately brought the Batman to life. Batman does not exist without Gotham City. It is the crime and corruption that overshadows all attempts to wipe it out that creates a vigilante obsessed with fighting it. Batman has always had fear as a weapon. At the start of The Batman, we get a narration from Robert Pattinson's character saying, "Fear is a tool." This Batman is a newer Batman, in his second year of fighting crime under the cowl, and he has street criminals worried. The opening scenes show Gotham City drenched in rain, and the bat signal illuminating the clouds above the city. This reminder that there is a vigilante out there beating the crap out of criminals is enough to give some of them pause. We get a scene where a gang are graffitiing a location and one of the gang members drops his spray paint and it rolls into the shadows. He looks at the bat signal lighting up the night sky and peers hard and long into the shadow before turning and fleeing. Batman isn't in that shadow, but the gang member didn't know that. For criminals, all shadows have now become Batman. Batman highlights this when he says, "I am the shadows." We get a good example of how this Batman is different from previous takes on the Batman when a gang riding the subway start to follow and attack a man. Batman traditionally has appeared from the shadows like a ninja, taking thugs down quickly before they realise what's hit them. This Batman is different. You hear him first. The thud of his steps and chink of metal on the batsuit sounds out from the shadows, and slowly Batman materialises from those shadows. He is not a stealthy ninja here. He is more akin to the Terminator, an unstoppable force of nature that will just beat you to a pulp. The lead gang member has a machete, and Batman intercepts the strike, then proceeds to beat this guy into the ground, viciously, violently. While there is skill in what he does, it is the directness and brutality of it that makes it effective. He takes on the rest of the gang, and while he is hit multiple times, even a bullet hits him, he is mostly protected by the batsuit, which has weight to it. It's basically armour. This is a Batman who isn't sticking to the shadows. He wants the criminals to see him, to know he's there. He wants them to fear his presence. The Riddler reflects this when in a cryptic message asks of Batman to bring the winged rat into the light. This is because justice can only be served in the light, and while bringing things into the light usually just means revealing the truth, here it was literal, and when Batman brings Falcone out of his building for the police to arrest him, and into a position where he's no longer safe and hidden, the Riddler assassinates Falcone. Weaponizing the dark enables a form of justice to occur. In past movies, Bruce Wayne has always been the billionaire playboy, a privileged upbringing from a child born into wealth, a trust fund baby, with an attractive woman always on his arm. And this is where the biggest difference lies between the past depictions of Batman in movies and Matt Reeves' vision. In the past movies, Batman has always been the mask that Bruce Wayne wears. It has been argued for a long time amongst comic readers that Bruce Wayne is the mask he wears and Batman is who he truly is. Now, I think as the Bat family has expanded and we get more of who Bruce Wayne Batman truly is, we get someone in the middle. There was controversy recently in a Batman story called Batman Damned that showed Batman returning from a mission and disrobing in the Batcave, completely naked, complete with bat penis. And I think that is symbolic of who Batman truly is. When he's in the Batcave, naked and the cowl is off, he is both Bruce Wayne and Batman. And I think in the comics that is who the real Bruce Wayne is, an amalgamation of the Bruce Wayne and Batman personas. In this version of Batman, Bruce Wayne is not a billionaire playboy. He is more akin to a rock star recluse, someone who is apart from the world going on around him. Bruce Wayne doesn't make appearances. He seems to have very little to do with the day-to-day running of Wayne Enterprises. It is suggested that he has very little involvement in Gotham itself. The mayoral candidate says to him his father did so much in terms of charity and says Bruce appears to do so little. He's not turning up to parties with attractive women on his arms. He only makes an appearance at the funeral for the mayor because he believes the killer will make an appearance. Patterson's Bruce Wayne is very much the mask, and his vigilante Batman persona is who this Batman truly is. Or so he believes. When asked who he is, Batman answers, "I am vengeance," and this is how Bruce Wayne sees himself at the start of the movie. He sees himself as the vigilante that is getting vengeance on the people who have turned Gotham into a cesspool of crime and corruption. This identity is who he inhabits and who he truly believes himself to be. Two events change his outlook. The first is Alfred almost being blown up. When Alfred is put in danger, when Riddler targets Bruce Wayne, not knowing that Bruce is Batman, it is Alfred that wears the consequences. The thought of losing Alfred affects Bruce. He says that he thought he had put all that hurt and pain and emotion aside, but he realizes he still has family. He still has attachments, and he doesn't want to go through and experience the feelings he felt as a child again. He has not dealt with that pain. Batman is a result of that trauma and a response to that pain. We see who Bruce is throughout the Batman. A sad, damaged man hyper-fixated on his singular pursuit. The second event is how he has become an inspiration to a sociopath that believes they are doing the same thing, they are pursuing the same goals. With the Riddler in Arkham, a conversation between the two sparks the realization that Batman's brand of vigilantism has done very little to address the issues that still plague Gotham, as the crime and corruption infests every pore of the city. And he has unintentionally inspired others like the Riddler to engage in their own form of vigilante justice. While Batman believes he is fighting crime and making Gotham City safer, the Riddler realizes that Gotham City is rotten to the core, that the institutions that are supposed to protect the people are corrupt. So Riddler chooses to cleanse them all by destroying the sea walls that hold the water at bay and taking out the people at the top, those in charge. He has radicalized a number of other disenfranchised people around him, and it is in stopping them from assassinating the new mayor that Batman realizes he can no longer be just vengeance. During the scene in Arkham, the Riddler insists that he and Batman are partners, that they are working towards the same goals, that together they've exposed all these lies and corruption from the mayor, the district attorney, and the police force. Bruce realizes that he has created the Riddler, that his presence, his brand of vigilante justice has brought out the crazies. Riddler says we're the same. And it shocks Bruce. He tells the Riddler, no, we are not the same. But the truth is they are. Riddler is just far more extreme. Just looking at this version of Bruce Wayne, we can tell he's not perfectly stable. And as mentioned before, this isn't the billionaire playboy we're used to seeing. This is the most outward expression we've seen so far of the mental state of Bruce Wayne. But should it really come as a shock to anyone that Batman is as disturbed as the villains he fights? He's a grown man who deals with his unresolved childhood trauma by dressing as a bat and beating the shit out of people. It is his outlet for that pain, and obviously doesn't derive from an emotionally stable place. Mentally healthy adults don't dress as bats and use violence to inflict vigilante justice on criminals. We learn in this movie that Bruce's mother, Martha Wayne, has a history of mental illness. More than that, she is connected by birthright to Arkham Asylum. She is a member of the Arkham family line. This inextricably connects Bruce and Batman to Arkham Asylum. It is literally in his DNA. So it should come as no surprise that Batman constantly finds himself dancing with Arkham's patients. It reminds me of a scene from one of the Batman Incorporated comics. Talia al Ghul says, "You with your Jokers and Riddlers, your evil doctors, all those grotesque mental patients you choose to match wits with. You'll never rise above them. You'll play in the mud for the rest of your life." Bruce is a man who had the means and resources to literally become anything. With all his training, he could have become the world's greatest spy or detective. He could have taken over from Ra's al Ghul and led the League of Shadows. He could have restructured the entire world order. But he didn't do any of that. Instead, he chose to stay in Gotham, dress up as a bat, surround himself with child apprentices, and deal with a constant line of mentally unstable villains. As Penguin says in this movie, this guy's crazy. But this Batman, this Bruce Wayne, realizes he needs to be something else. So far, his brand of vigilante justice, his vengeance, has done nothing to change Gotham. The small-time criminals were afraid of him, but it had done nothing to stop the crime and corruption embedded in Gotham's institutions. The moment he realizes he has to change comes when he takes down one of the Riddler copies, one of the goons there to kill those in charge. When Batman asks him, "Who are you?" he replies, "I am vengeance," mimicking Batman's own response to the same question from earlier. In this moment, Bruce has an epiphany that being vengeance is only adding to the darkness that is drowning Gotham, that he must become something more. He must become Gotham's hope. And it is this ability to change, this ability to be something different, that distinguishes him from the mental patients he fights. In a world as dark and bleak as Gotham, hope comes in the form of light. The light literally holds the darkness at bay. This is where this movie, where cinematographer Greg Fraser does some amazing visual storytelling with the theme. We have moments of this throughout the film. Moments where light creeps into the scene, softening the oppressive nature of the city and providing hope. The first major instance of this is with Selina and Batman on the roof, high above the Gotham City streets. The lighting here alone, at the break of day, when it's no longer dark, with oranges and reds lighting the scene, tells us visually we should have hope that the two of them together can change Gotham, can make it less bleak, less dark, that they are a prevailing influence that can literally bring light to Gotham. But there is one scene towards the end that epitomizes this change. As water races through Gotham and is sweeping through the building that people are using for shelter, Batman has severed a cable on a large screen that threatened to electrocute everyone in the water below. Doing so shocked him, and he plunged into the water as things go dark. But he arises from that water, lights a flare, and becomes that light, that hope that the people of Gotham need. He starts by rescuing people from fallen debris and leading them to safety. In the scenes that follow, he helps a woman onto a stretcher and is working with the rescuers to save people. He transitions in these moments from a violent vigilante to the hero that Gotham needs. It is this journey, this transition from a loner vigilante that is adding to the problems Gotham faces into a hero more connected to the people around him, that makes this Batman the most compelling Batman so far. Thanks for watching. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video, or consider supporting the channel through our Patreon. If you think I missed anything or have any comments, put them in the comments below and I'll see you next video.